Okay, hello guys. Today we will talk about a fairly familiar topic, yet hard to understand one, which is fraction and percentage. So in fraction and percentage, it's very common that we get confused over the different parts of the fractions, because the main thing is that when we look at it, sometimes we might not understand exactly, are we supposed to focus on the top or the bottom. So in any particular fraction, when we look at 1 out of 3, so this is known as 1 out of 3. So 1 out of 3, it means to say that the thing that you want to divide into, which is equal part, will have to be divided into 3 parts. So the bottom always talk about the total that you have. Then the top is the quantity that you're interested in. So 1 out of 3, this is what we want. So for example, if we're going to talk about dividing a sum of money, so let's say you have a total of $90, then I will say that please help me to find what is 1/3 of this amount of money. Let's say I want 1/3, so which also means to say that 1/3 is 1 out of the 3. So we separate this into 3 parts, 1, 2, 3, and equal portion. So what happens is that we do a 90 divided by 3, which gives us $30 per portion. But of course, I could be more greedy. Maybe I want 2 out of 3. So if that's the case, I want 2 portions out of the 3 portion. So then I will take a 30 times 2, which is equal to $60. So fraction is very easy to use if you are able to understand that this you need to divide into how many portions, and out of this portion, how many of it do you really want. And in fact, percentage is pretty similar. In the case that percentage is also going to be talking about dividing your certain amount of things, money or quantity of a marble that you have, into, in this case, 100 equal parts. So often when we say the whole thing, right, we call it 100%. So this means to say 100 parts. And on the other hand, maybe you are not looking at taking all the whole 100 parts, then I could be taking a 30%. Okay, 30%, which also means to say that I only want 30 pieces out of these 100 pieces. And because of that, the relationship between fraction and percentage rate often is, we're going to take, for example, 30% rate. I can change it to 30 parts out of 100 parts. So now if you have an understanding of fraction, then now percentage is actually the same thing. Because all we are talking about is that instead of 3 part, 4 part, 5 part, the division, so I want to divide equally into 100 parts, and I want 30 of it. So this is a very good way to look at numbers, because when we look at the proportion of things, 100 and 30 out of 100, 40 out of 100, we can get a sense of, okay, are we nearing the halfway point or are we more than the halfway point? So 30% will be less than the halfway point. Then 90% will be a lot more than the halfway point, in fact, nearing completion. So 90% on the other hand will be 90 out of 100. So at this point, I hope you understand that when we deal with percentages, the best way to do it is change it to fraction, because you learn fraction first. So after you have learned fraction, you will know that the thing, the quantity, need to be divided by a certain number of parts before you find out what is 1 part of it or 2 part of it, right? So the relationship between percentage and fraction can really be put together once you are able to understand how we can use 100 parts for percentages to find the quantity, how we're going to separate into portions. So now let's consider a scenario where we have a sum of money that we need to divide. A very common question in the exam, where you have $200 and then you have 4% that you want to share it. And possibly they can give you the fraction of the money that you want to get, or I can possibly give you the actual amount of money, like in this question. So for instance, let's say you have 4%, Ben, Leroy, and Ken. But of course, in this question will be, they ask, how much will Isabel get if let's say she has 40% of what Ken has? So take note, this 40%, you have to read after the 40%, what Ken has, Ken, not the total. So this is very important, because if you look at it, a lot of people will have thought that, oh, 40% of 200, right? The first thing that comes to their mind, because we are dividing a sum of money into 4 parts, so I would have thought that you wanted me to find 40% of 200. But if you read carefully, it is actually 40% of can. So in percentages, we are looking at what exactly is the 100% first. Are you referring to the sum of money, or are you referring to what can has? So you guys to be very clear on this. So easy way will be, right, when you read the question, you read what is after the 40%, right? So in this case, it's can. Which also means to say that in finding out the part of the whole, what we need to do is we need to find 40% of can. So one of the easy way that my teacher used to teach me is that whenever they say of, remember to change it to multiply. So then I will write 40% of $80, right? Can has $80. So from then onwards, we can actually find out what exactly is the amount that Ken had. Okay, but pertaining to this operation, let's look at the next slide to understand how we can do this. So how to get 40% times 80? So now, before we go into the actual percentage, let's try to do this by fraction. So this is actually a fraction multiplication with whole number. So imagine I want to find 3/4 of $100. So the way we do it will be, right, we will take 3/4, remember I say, change this to multiply. So 3/4 multiplied by $100. Then from here, there's two ways to do it. Either you multiply the top with the top first. So 100 is actually over 100 if you want to do it this way. So 3 times 100, not over 100, it's actually over 1. So 3 times 100 will be 300. Then 4 times 1, you will get over 4. So from here onwards, you can then continue to simplify this fraction to get the quantity that you want. So this probably will require a long division, and then we will be able to get the answer. So 300 divided by 4, let's try to do this. So this is 728 minus 2, 0, 5. So in actual fact, this is a total of $75. Okay, this 20 minus 0, yeah. So it's $75. Or alternatively, if you are familiar with multiplication of fraction, then we can actually take 3/4 multiplied by 100, and then we do a cancellation because we remember that 100 actually has a factor of 4. So if I were to do a cancellation, I'm actually dividing 100 by 4, so I'll get 25. Then from then on, we will still get the answer, which is $75. So both way works, right? And the second way is in fact the preferred way, although some people don't prefer cancellation, but this is the faster ways to do the question. Okay, now let's move on to percentage. When we talk about 30% of 150, exactly how do we do it? So the first thing you need to do is remember 30% actually means over 100. So that's the first thing we are going to write. So 30 over 100. Okay, and of, remember, change it to multiplication. So multiply 30 over 100 multiplied by $150. Right, so this is what we're going to do. Then from then, we can do the same cancellation as we see. Yeah, so once you are able to change it to a fraction, then we can do all the things that we learned about fraction up to this point to do it. So now we can actually do a cancellation. Once again, the largest factor of 150, common factor between 150 and 100 is 50. So I'm going to divide by 50 here, I will get 3. I'm going to divide by 50 here, I will get 2. Then can I simplify further? Yes, 30 can divide by 2. So I'm going to cancel this with 1. This becomes 15. And then the final answer will be 45 because 15 times 3. So this is how we're going to find part of a whole by using percentages. So the golden rule is change it to fraction over 100 and then you multiply by the quantity. In some cases, if let's say you have to do with decimal, then I would suggest maybe you can use a calculator. That might be easier for you. But of course, take note, make sure you are doing the second paper, then you use calculator. Okay, now let's look at the actual word problem of how all these things can be worked together. So it's common that you will not just get fraction in a question, you probably will get percentages because that is the real world. We don't just deal with fraction, there's also percentages. So how do we work with all these very confusing numbers and with mixture of percentages, decimal and fraction? So this problem, we're going to look at how percentage and fraction are being used. So I will say that the golden rule is always, can you change it to the same common language? So if you are preferring to work with fraction, use fraction. Okay, percentage, use percentage. Do not mix them. So although the question makes them, but you need to learn how to change it to one of it. So in this question, we have two persons, Cai Li and Deepa. So they have different amount of money. And after Cai Li spent 25% of her money and Deepa spent 2/3 of her money, both of them had the same money left. So in terms of model drawing, right, Cai Li, Deepa having different amount of money would simply means that the model would be different length. Of course, at the end of the day, it depends on who has more money. Then the more money one should be a longer model, longer bar model. And then after which, right, Cai Li spent 25%. So later on, we're going to do something to that quantity. Deepa spent 2/3. Then at the end, they have the same amount of money left. So in modern drawing, it means to say they are either the same length or same number of unit. Okay, remember that. Same length or same number of unit. So now, finally, they said that the total amount of money left was $480. Total amount of money left. There's a few ways to do this question, but what we're going to do is to start by drawing the model. Then we can actually make sense of what we need to do further on. So in proportion wise, if let's say this is Cai Li, then I will say that 25% looks like this. It's about, if you can see, right, 1 out of 4 pieces. Actually, if I were to cut here and cut here, this is exactly 4 pieces. So in fact, 25% is 25 over 100, which is equals to 1 out of 4 simplified fractions. Then after which, when we talk about Deepa, 2 out of 3, basically is more than half, right? So it's more than half. It's about 2 pieces. Okay, 1 piece, 1 piece, 2 pieces, then 2 out of 3. Okay, let's move on to the next page now. So now let's try to develop the model for this question, which is very important. First thing first, if you said that Cai Li has 25% of the money spent, the thing that comes to my mind will be I will write 25 over 100, which translate to, so this is Cai Li, okay, to translate to a simplified fraction of 1/4. So when we talk about model drawing for Cai Li, I will draw 4 boxes. Okay, so 4 boxes. Okay, this is the model for Cai Li. Then after which for Deepa is more straightforward because it's 2/3. So this is the total. This is the spend. Okay, remember the top is always the quantity that you want. The bottom is the total. So now for Deepa, we're going to draw a total of 3 units. But the way I will do it will be in this manner. Later I will explain why. Right? Okay, so in this case, right, when I draw, I will align to the front. Okay, first of all, right, I'm going to shade this. This is actually spanner. Then for Deepa, right, I will actually align my model to the Cai Li's one. Okay, so it will look something like this. So these 2 units will be like that. Something like this. And after which, right, I'm going to add 1 more box in front. Okay, you're going to be very careful because you want to make sure that the boxes are not of the same length. Because if they're of the same length, you are inferring a different thing. You are trying to say that they have the same amount of money, which is not true, right? We already said that at the beginning. Right, so this is the model diagram for Deepa and Cai Li. And of course, we already know that Deepa spent 2/3 of her money. Okay, so in this case, right, I will have to shade this 2 part. Okay, and then you notice something is wrong already because the way I align the model should have been right. Okay, the left are equal. So which also means to say that we might need to redraw this again. Let me do it again. So this is wrong. Yeah, sometimes it's like that. You might need to make adjustment to your model as you go along because you might have drawn the comparison of length wrongly. So, but same thing, we're going to align Deepa's one, right, to such a way that 1 unit is here. Okay, because I spent 2 out of 3, so 1 unit left. Then after which, right, I will draw 1 more box here and another 1 more box here. Okay, then I'm going to label this as Deepa now. Right, so once again, I'm going to shade this and I will say that this has been spent. And it is extremely important for you now to make comparison between the 2 models. So usually to do it, right, to help our eyes to see, we can draw a dotted line. Something like this. And then now you can make a comparison. Oh, so in other words, 1 unit of TIPA is actually 3 units of what Charlie had. So the best way to do this question will be, now let's start by making TIPA's unit all look like Charlie's unit. Then we can actually make comparison. So in actual fact, TIPA has a total of 9 units then, and then Charlie will still remain as 4 units at the beginning. So this is talking about the total. The spend part for TIPA is in fact 6 units. Okay, and then now you make a counting. The remaining unit that Charlie has will become 3, and TIPA has is also 3. Why is knowing this important? Because this can help us to link back to this quantity here, the $480. So now, if I have to add the unit together, 3 plus 3 will be equal to 6 units. So 6U will be $480. So 1 unit will be 480 divided by 6, which gives us about $80, right, per unit. And now we are talking about how much do they have at first. So last but not least, let's add up the total unit. So we take a 4 plus 9, which is equals to 13U. Okay, so 13U would then have been $80 multiplied by 13. So if I do a mental sum, 80 times 10 first, you will get 800. So 80 times 3 will be 240. So 800 plus 240 will be 1040. Okay, so I hope you have a good time understanding what this particular question is about and how do you solve it. So I will say that most of the time when working with very different quantity, various like we have percentages with fractions or even decimal, the best way is to change them to the same thing or to fraction. My preferred is actually fraction, because fraction can help me to work out the quantity, the unit they have, and then we can use unit and model diagram to find out the actual quantity up there. And of course, last but not least, remember that in your model drawing, please try to change all the unit to the same size as best as possible. Use words such as same amount left to make comparison. So make sure that the length is aligned. That's why you don't necessarily have to start at the same point. But in this case, I use the back part of the model diagram, right, to try to align them. And then using that, we try to cut the unit into one that we can find the quantity. Okay, thank you very much for watching the video. In the near future, I will continue to shoot more videos involving other topics as well. So please feel free to subscribe to my channel and like my channel if let's say you find it useful. Thank you very much.